You join us in the Bluebird wing of the Ruskin Museum here in Coniston, and I say us because we've got with us Gina Campbell, daughter of Donald, of course, and we're here today to mark what would have been, Gina, the 100th birthday of your dad on March the 23rd.
Correct. Incredible, isn't it, to think we have all those years gone.
We couldn't be anywhere else, really, could we, but Coniston?
Absolutely not.
Talk to us a bit, perhaps, about his connection to this village and his affection for it.
Well, it goes way back. I mean, even back into his grandfather's, my grandfather, his father, Sir Malcolm Campbell's time. Coniston, I mean, it offers everything for world water speed records. Most importantly, the enthusiasm of the residents. Without that and their welcoming nature, you couldn't possibly hold a world water speed record without their support. But it's got ideal water.
The length of the lake.
The length of the
5
lake.
miles, yeah.
And straight. Ullswater was lovely from my father's first record, but it had that dog leg. As soon as the speeds increased, the dog leg became an issue. So Coniston offered everything once the speeds got, well, in every direction. And come on, can you think of anywhere nicer?
Oh, no. I love hanging around this village. And a lot of it's got to do with your dad's legacy, and I can, when I...
You can sense it.
Yeah, of course. Yes, when I go down to the water's edge, or I go down to Peter Cottage, which was his base for so many of the record attempts, I can feel his spirit moving among us, I can.
You certainly can. I mean, I feel it always coming along the Lakeside Road. My dad used to stop there.
And look down.
And look down and study the water. And, and the water conditions change so quickly, which goes on to why on the day of my dad's accident did he not stop to refuel. The water conditions can flick like that, and he just wanted to get on with it, and it wasn't something unusual.
We'll come on to that last record attempt in a bit, but still with Coniston. Coniston adopted him as well, didn't he? He didn't just adopt Coniston, it worked both ways.
Well, he was a larger-than-life character, and I can only imagine when he sort of rolled into town, so to speak, in the 60s with the entourage. Can you imagine Bluebird arriving here?
No, well, I was coming up on the windy road from Ambleside. I think your dad usually used to come in the other way.
Yes. Still winding.
It's not a motorway, is it?
And of course you didn't have your marvellous big sort of trucks that we've got today with all the mod cons. This was hard work. It was a day's journey.
I thought to myself, how on earth did they get it in and out of it? But of course it once got famously stuck, didn't it? When it went off the road going down to Peter Cottage.
You shouldn't go so fast.
But he loved the place, didn't he? And they loved him.
He did, absolutely. And look, isn't it befitting that my father lays in the churchyard here now? This is his adopted home. Because home, when I was a child, was fairly transient. We moved around, albeit in the home counties. But, get north of Watford Gap, there's no other place, is there?
You think it's fitting that he's...
Absolutely.
He's still here, isn't he?
And here he shall remain.
OK. Well, the museum has been gathering a number of questions for you, Gina.
Yep.
From fans of your dad and from fans of Bluebird K7, his last boat. These have come in through social media to the Ruskin Museum. And we'll kick off with one from James Hilton. And James wants to know, Gina, what's the very best memory of your father and why?
Ooh, what's the very best memory of my father? Do you know, it just suddenly springs to mind, my father wasn't a very touchy-feely dad, and therefore it was sort of, I didn't sit on his knee, and if you're understanding. And it was when I would go and say goodnight to him, and he would stand up and he'd give me a kiss on my forehead. Now, that sounds awfully... Formal, but it meant a lot. And those little moments of, I'm calling father-daughter intimacy, were... I didn't spend a lot of time, don't forget, I was at boarding school. So I grew up with my father, but at a slight distance, if that makes sense. So it's very hard to grab one memory. We always had fun when we went skiing, snow skiing. So those were really, really good, close father and daughter times because you know, I was a little tiny thing, low centre of gravity, and I'd just go anywhere the skis went. Never skied before, but I was like a little jackrabbit. Do you know what I mean? Just follow him along and yes, we had some good fun and thrills and spills. And he picked me up by the scruff of my neck, and off we go again. You know.
Just where do you do it?
Exactly. Yeah, we almost sort of ski between his legs. So, those were very happy memories of a closeness.
And he'd had a rather stiff and formal upbringing without much warmth, hadn't he? Do you think he found it difficult to
I do.
show those qualities?
You know, when it's action and reaction in so much as he wouldn't. There's no book of instructions on parenting in those
No,
days.
you can tell me,
Yeah, exactly. So, however it was done with him is how I think he thought, well, that's how it's done. And from what I gather, yes, Malcolm Campbell was a fairly sort of aloof, but it was very much the English and stiff upper lip, and you know, you don't show your emotions and in public, and probably not an awful lot in private either. So it's a tough one.
Although, when I read in detail about your dad for the first time, it was in David Tremaine's book, The Man Behind the Mask, and then there's quite a lot of them in this wonderful book by Neil Shepherd, Donald Campbell and the Final Record Attempt. I came away from those books really liking your dad. He came across, to me, as a very warm bloke and a generous bloke.
Oh, very friendly. My father was the life and soul of a party, but he could also take that party down into depths. He had a very powerful personality. Of his mood would reflect on everybody else's. Oh, really? And yes, he could do it. You know, he could turn a wedding into a funeral, and a funeral into a wedding.
Oh, right. Well, yeah.
He had this tremendous presence of character. How he did it, who knows? Is it that word panache? That strength of character,
charisma.
Yeah, yes. It's a strange. How do you define it? But he was very likable. He had lots and lots and lots and lots of friends, and what do they say? You judge people by the quality of friends they keep.
I came away from those two books really wishing I'd known him.
Yeah.
I thought,
well, you probably do. I mean,
I was only 7 on the day he was killed. I do have vivid memories of hearing on the news that he'd been killed, but I never got the chance to.
But these books have given you a great insight into the man behind the mask. You know. He had this, yes, he had these many facets, you know, as we're talking about it, you know. It changed, he was, how do I say, as a child, it's very hard to describe your father. Can you describe yours? He was,
Yes.
yeah, oh, okay, well, it was as bad as that, was it? You know, he was just my dad. Right. He was strict, very strict, and I had huge respect for him. I mean, if he'd said to me, Gina, the best thing you can do in this world is to chop your right arm off, I'd do it. And I wouldn't even ask why.
Yes.
Because if he'd told me to do it, that was obviously the right thing to do.
Yeah, that kind of leadership quality almost.
There you go, yeah.
But again, you just raised something there. David Tremaine's book, The Man Behind the Mask. Was there a mask? I got the impression that he was a very straightforward, upfront sort of bloke, very honest.
Oh, completely. Yeah. But he had these facets. I've listened to old interviews of him, and the voice he uses there was not the voice he used at home. You know, and Georgina, if I'd done anything wrong, or my school reporter come in, if he called me Georgina, I was in trouble, in serious trouble.
So there was a public voice and a public face.
But isn't that probably the same with most people in the public eye? What you see like this is very different to how you are in the privacy of your own home. I'm sure it has to be. I
mean, my friend Robin, who's here today taking photographs and lives in Coniston, has told me stories of when Robin was a little lad, he and his pals from school had wandered down to where your dad was based with Leo Villa and Bluebird at Pier Cottage, and there'd be no...
Oh, no airs, no graces.
No.
Oh, absolutely not.
And can you imagine now somebody in the world record water speed
Well, it
attempt.
would all be cordoned
with the
off.
place overrun with eager schoolboys. It's just unthinkable, isn't it?
Well, we sort of saw that in a way. Maybe it's Bluebird when we were at Butte. You know, that was open pretty well. You know, the kids could get really close. And it wasn't that sort of like in the pits of a Formula One race
crikey, no.
where you can't get within 3 miles of it without, you know, 10 passes and scrutineering.
That's one of the things I really like about these Coniston attempts and Coniston years. There was something just wonderfully amateurish about it all, wasn't there? I mean, it was basically a two-man team, with the addition when they got here of Robbie Robinson. With the tarpaulin.
I know, full of water pockets and water dripping down.
And Robbie Robinson joined them, so it was essentially no more than 3, really.
Well.
Anyway, another question from sent to which your dad confided in you. Anthony Stutchbury said, did your dad ever express to you which record he was most proud of achieving? And if not, which record do you think he would have been most proud of? And Bobby Wildcard, surely not the name he was born with, what did your dad sound like when he spoke to you about his record attempts? And Bobby says, I've always wondered about the passion and or restraint he exercised when it came to talking about his work to his amazing daughter.
Wow. Well, my
Silver-tongued devil.
What was my...
You want the first one again?
Well, no, I get it. Which record would he have been most proud of? Do you know, I can't answer for him, obviously, but it's got to be your first, hasn't it? Isn't that sort of the pinnacle? You've worked and promised yourself you will, and then you finally do it. Surely the first has got to be, in your mind, your most memorable. But the one I think he was most proud of was in his last successful record in Australia, Lake Dumbleyung.
Doing the double, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's something he always wanted to do.
Land speed and water speed.
In the 1 year. Yeah. And think about that logistically, Andy. In 1963-64, manoeuvring those 2 machines all the way to Australia.
It must have cost a fortune.
Well, forget the cost, it's just the logistics.
Yeah.
And
they were remote locations in Australia.
I was going to say, out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I've had the luck to have been to both. And you think, how did they get here? Plus all the logistical people, the spares, the food, the bedding, the sleeping arrangements.
Almost a military
it would have
operation, isn't it?
It would have to have been. And the sheer scale of it, just to get them there, fly them there. By boat, how did they get that? I don't even remember.
And wasn't he flying away from one, thinking it wasn't going to happen?
Apparently so,
When
yes.
suddenly the weather changed and he had the plane turned back and came back and broke the record. Was that land or water?
That was water.
That was water.
Well, my father flew himself.
Right.
He was a private pilot. That was his passion, actually, was flying. He would fly from here to go to the supermarket almost. He really would.
So the double very nearly didn't happen.
And apparently he'd gone to take off because the lake was too rough and it was the end of the year, already December 31st, mid-afternoon, and the lake was not suitable. He'd taken off and someone called him. Didn't have mobile phones in those days, so I really don't know
So
how.
radioed him.
And said, get yourself back here, the lake's as flat as a pancake, and we know the outcome. Pull Bluebird out, and luckily, man, machine, and weather, and nature, and everything came together for that one moment. And that's what he really wanted. It would have been fallen flat if he'd have done it the next day. And his father had died on December 31st. I think the day was quite sort of poignant to him. So, yeah, I think, but I can't speak for him. And they ask about his passion and his motivation. I'm not sure about. You have to bear in mind that record making became a bit of a business. You know, Billy Butlin put up £5,000 for every time, well, water speed record was broken. That wasn't to be sniffed at in those days.
No, it's lots of money back then.
It still is a relative amount of money, but in those days, that was a lot of money. So there was motivation because it had become his business. He didn't have time to do a job from 9 till 5. So therefore record breaking, and this was how he earned his income.
Would he have wanted a 9 to 5 job ever?
Oh, I don't think so, no, absolutely not.
And did he feel he had to do what he did because of his father's achievements?
Well, isn't it most young lads' dream to be as good as, if not better than their father?
Well, I didn't particularly want to be a head teacher, Gina.
Well, you were asking me with my dad. You know, Malcolm Campbell in his time was a superhero.
Oh yeah,
and
celebrity, wasn't he?
A huge public figure, and to grow up as a little boy and see your father get this huge amount of notoriety through his own achievements.
And adulation, so not just notoriety, was it?
Exactly. Yeah. So, aren't you spurred on to do the same? Damon Hill, Graham Hill.
Right.
If you grow up in the shadow of somebody as powerful as Malcolm Campbell was, I can totally see why you wanted to follow on. In a very small way to me, later in my life, sadly after my father had died, people would introduce me, say, oh, meet a friend of mine, it's Gina Campbell, her father was Donald Campbell, you know. Oh, they say, and what do you do?
Right.
What? And you think, well, what
do I have to live up to it?
Exactly. Well, with their very inference, they've put a pressure on you to prove yourself.
To have done something extraordinary yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
So, in terms of, did my father, do you know, our life at home was not all about record breaking. It didn't sort of work like that. My dad had a lovely office in the house, and the secretary, lovely secretary who now still alive, lives in Australia, Rosie. And he conducted his business in his office. And he did sort of, I suppose, in a way, work 9 to 5. But then you could stroll up the garden, and there was a building not dissimilar to this lovely place we're sitting in now, where the 2 Bluebirds would be parked, along with all the ancillary equipment and speedboats and other things that would be in the building. And Leo would be there from dawn till dusk.
He's faithful engineer, yeah.
And Maury. Yeah. And so there was always something going on in the workshop, always. And so he could stroll in between. My father was a very hands-on. He understood how Bluebird worked. Right. Whereas Sir Malcolm was very much the gentleman racer.
He'd just turn up and then walk away afterwards.
Almost turn up and wipe his goggles and speak to the press and then go home. Whereas my father was very hands-on. And if you notice in a lot of the old photographs down at the workshops here in Coniston on the lakeside, my dad was always there.
Yeah.
Helping or advising or just there. Yeah. And he knew how it all worked. He understood the machine.
Even in the worst weather, when the occasion when the new engine had to be found and it had to be craned in, and he's always there, isn't he, with a bobble hat on?
Exactly.
And his overalls.
Yeah, well, you need a bobble hat.
Another question here, Gina. This one from Jeff Wall Davis. What was Donald's rivalry like with Craig Breedlove? Did Donald and Craig ever communicate much? Craig Breedlove, of course, was an American record breaker.
Yes, Landspeed record.
Spirit of America.
Correct. Yeah. Well, of course, he sort of, if you want to say, he one-ups my father by breaking my father's Landspeed record, but with a jet-powered. We have to go back to where the rules were, that the cars must be wheel-driven. And Bluebird CN7 was... all 4 wheels were driven. So the technology is much more intense to have a wheel rather than a projectile. So to answer your question, I think there was a healthy respect between the two, but as far as my father was concerned, Craig broke the rules.
I see.
But you know what happens? You break the rules, and after a bit, actually, the rules get broken to suit yourself. And of course, now the Landspeed record is done by pure jet thrust, and not by a wheel-driven car. Right. So is it a Landspeed record? Is it a projectile record? Is it an aeroplane without the takeoff? It's a very debatable point. Rivalry, my father didn't consider it rivalry because Craig Breedlove was doing his own thing.
An aeroplane without wings.
Fair enough, exactly as you say. So he didn't see him as a rival. My father was typically British, sticking to the rules.
And I did read somewhere, didn't I, that they were actually quite friendly. And on one occasion, Breedlove came to dinner at your dad's house in Surrey.
Yes, he did. So it wasn't a case of rivalry. It was a case of respecting each other's positions.
Right. You and Mays, who's just 10, and it's his birthday in mid-March, Gina.
Woo, lucky lad. Well, so, let's first of all wish him a very, very happy birthday to Ewan.
Happy birthday, Ewan.
Yes. And from Mr. Whoppit too.
Well, we're going to come on to Mr. Whoppit in a bit. Did your dad have an interest in steam trains? And did Donald ever get scared of what he was doing?
Whoa. Steam trains, I do know that we had the most fantastic Hornby train set at home as a child. I wasn't allowed to play with it, but I was allowed to watch. I know. And so
you were a girl, you see.
I know. Yeah, I know. Born with the wrong tackle. And he would let me sort of, and he would direct it. And it was well, everything's huge when you're a child, but it was quite a memorable piece of equipment on the dining room table. So maybe he had a huge interest in steam trains, but it was not something that I was aware of. Right. Not like today now, we've all gone back to the past and we love our steam trains, don't we? And did he get scared? Was that the second part?
Yes, the second part of Ewan's question, yeah.
I don't think scared is the right word, but really, really aware of the massive dangers that he was putting himself under. You know, you cannot expect to get into a car at over 400 miles an hour and a boat at over 300 miles an hour and be totally oblivious to the fact that this could be your final day. Now, if you have a death wish, well, maybe that's fine, but my father didn't have one of those. So I would imagine, you know, we all know that feeling, don't we, in the pit of the stomach when things are just, when your back's against the wall and you know you have to produce the goods. I know that, yeah, he was human and a very human man. So
good at hiding it, do you think? He's trepidation or?
Yes, I would imagine so. I think, you know, like we probably all go a bit quiet and you don't want to, and I think that also goes back to why he really didn't want his family around him when he was doing record attempts, because they were, you know, I might have been stupid. You weren't allowed to wish him good luck, for instance.
He was very superstitious, wasn't
he? Very superstitious. And, you know, your family is a sort of a distraction away from what your job in hand is. And if your job in hand is to actually put your life on the line, it's a bit strange to have your family there sort of watching it, wondering if this is going to be the last time you see each other.
So if he wasn't comfortable about it, for how many world record attempts were you with him?
Oh, I was lucky enough. I'm going to stab at about 5.
Right.
Because, you know, he did break the record on my birthday one year.
Which one was that?
19th September, was it 1956? And I just so remember I had been swimming in the lake.
Here at Coniston?
Yes. Yeah. I just learned to swim and I was doggy paddling along and while Bluebird was running. I know, isn't that it?
Well, there was no concept of health and safety in those days, was there?
No.
If there had been, your dad would never have done any of this.
You're so right.
Go on, carry on.
I think someone gave me a dare to swim from one jetty to another. And I remember, it's freezing cold, can you imagine? But you don't feel it as a child. And there were live reporters in those days, thrust this microphone in front of me and said, well, surely, Gina, that is the very, very best birthday present you could possibly have. And I went, oh no, I'd much rather have a pony.
And your dad had just done what speed?
200 and... Well, somebody's going to absolutely know the figures. And
did you get the pony?
No, oh. not for a while.
Simon Steele, or Style, Gina, asks... or says, Donald's father, Malcolm, was a hill climb competitor. He was more than that. He built the cancer motor racing as well,
Oh, my goodness me, yes, he did.
Was Donald interested in hill climbs?
I'm going to speak for my father, and I hate assuming things, but I don't believe so.
No.
I don't remember.
Did he do any other kind of motor racing?
No, only for publicity, you know, sort of, what do you call them, sort of laps for the...
Parade laps or
that's it.
demonstration laps?
Yes, exactly
Right.
there. And, but no, I don't think he was particularly interested in motorsport in that direction.
Right. John Selby wants to know, how tall was your dad?
Oh, he wasn't that tall. He used
Strange,
to,
isn't
yes.
it? In photographs, he gives the impression of being tall. I
He
don't
was
know how he
quite-
does it.
He's quite, well, we were all a bit smaller then, weren't we? He was quite I'm going to say stocky, he was quite broad.
Yeah.
But I believe he was about, I'm going to say 5'9", 5'10".
Right.
But he wasn't a man that stood, I'm going to say, with this huge sort of stature. But then look at Winston Churchill, he was hardly...
So the statue that stands just outside
Yes,
the doors
yes,
here, the
yes.
entrance to the Bluebird wing at the Ruskin Museum, is that pretty much life size, would you say? Or is it?
It looks a little larger to me, but then, you know, I'd hate to measure it and say I'm all wrong, but we're not, the Campbells were not very big. You look at me, you know, a pint-sized thing. So, and my Auntie Jean, she was not a big lady. I don't think Malcolm Campbell was. My grandmother, Lady Campbell, she was not. We were not a big in stature family.
But a giant of a man to
But
us.
exactly.
Neil Crosby wants to know, and I want to know this as well, Gina, because
crikey.
it appears in so many photographs when your dad and Leo Villa were down there at Pier Cottage in Coniston. What's happened to the blue E-Type Jaguar? Is it still around?
It is still around.
Wow.
Yeah. After my dad died, Tonya, my father's widow, my stepmother, she sold it fairly quickly after my dad's death. And it went to an engineering family in Leatherhead, which was the town, the village we lived in at the time. And from what I know, they still own it. I haven't seen it for donkey's years. I can go back and say that I've seen it at various events, maybe at Brooklands or somewhere. Whether they use it, that I don't know. Lost touch and all the rest of it. It was a lovely car.
Yeah, but when you last heard, it was still on the road and still with the same registration.
Yes, not with the C7, unless the same family have it. I was shopping in the village of Cobham, which is near to Leatherhead, many, many moons ago. And I saw this burgundy Mercedes parked on the side of the street with the C7 on it. And I walked over, looked around, nobody around. So I got a piece of paper and I wrote, "Memories of the past, DC7, my late father's number plate, Gina Campbell." Stuck it under the wiper blade. Half an hour later, I saw the old Mercedes with an old Dutch in the back driving away, with the windscreen wipers going, the piece of paper going flop, 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 flop. So there we go. That was, I just thought, isn't that ironic? I've just written her a little note and she's absolutely oblivious to
it. John Bullivant wants to know, Gina, what is the Campbell Family Heritage Trust and what do they do, or what does it do?
What does it do? My cousin Don Wells came up with the idea many moons ago of setting it up. My cousins and myself, we are obviously Malcolm Campbell's descendants. And Don was very keen to make sure that the family cohesion stayed together and that the name Campbell Bluebirds was protected by some form of copyright, and that it was in a position to further the careers of any young people to try and make some funds available for any young people that want to go into record breaking, whether it be on land, air or water. And that we had some sort of credibility of a family trust. And Donald runs it, and he does it very well, and puts a lot of time and effort into it. We're not actively going out there seeking, but people do approach us. Could they use the Campbell name for a coin or a commemorative plaque, or they want to do X, Y, and Z? And the answer is, Don said yes, but it needs to be to the Campbell design, and we have to approve it and make sure that it's not an abomination and an abuse and a use of our family name.
So it's really protecting
Exactly.
the memory and the legacy of your dad.
Exactly. In a nutshell, you say it much more succinctly than I do, but I'm trying to explain how, and yeah, Donald's the boss really. He looks after it.
Very good. Ian Harris, why the name Bluebird?
Well, it's sort of written there right in front of us, isn't it? My grandfather, Sir Malcolm Campbell, used to race a car called Flapper, and round Brooklands and racetracks, and never did any good really. He was always, and also ran.
He got the name from a play or something.
Well, exactly. This is what I was just going. He went to theatre with his dinner suit one night with a bunch of colleagues to see the play by Maeterlinck called The Bluebird of Happiness, and he came away actually entranced by this play.
This would be in the 20s, would it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Entranced by the story of the Bluebird of Happiness being by the side of each and every one of us, but if you grasp it and try to retain it, it will become elusive and fly away. He loved this story. I didn't know he was so soft, to be honest. And he literally went home in his dinner suit, knocked up the local ironmonger, got every pot of blue paint, whether it's gloss, emulsion or whatever, mixed the whole lot together and had a pot of paint, painted Flapper blue, paintbrush, sort of any colour will do blue, and put it on the trailer, and off he went, and the next day won his first race. And the name Bluebird has sort of stuck, and it is a lovely word, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a lovely description, the bluebird, and it's got lovely connotations about it. I think so, anyway.
Sure, it certainly has now. Ian Lazenby wants to know about your own career in speed, Gina. Hiya, Gina. Do you still take out speedboats yourself? And what was the noise like when you did your record? Also, my dad Ernie is now retired from model boat building, so I will no longer run the big turbine K7 he built for me, as it's too valuable to lose. How often do you think the real K7 should run? And is that too valuable to lose too? So the first component...
We've got a few questions within there, and I'm well aware of Ernie's model building, and he's a superb model maker. And if I had one of Ernie's models, I certainly wouldn't want to risk losing it. Do I still? No. Do I? I don't go out, no. Well, do you know we're very limited in this country inland where you can take a boat and go fast?
Sure.
And it means going to the sea. And there again, you've got to launch, you've got to have the conditions, and by the time you get there and all the rest, it's time to pack up and go home. And
just tell us about the record you broke. And Ian wants to know what was the noise like when you were doing it.
Well, the noise is so far behind you, and luckily if you're going that fast, 180 miles an hour, the noise hasn't quite caught you up. But it is but yes, there is a noise when you fire up a big block Chevy. There is, it's that thumping between your legs of, the power of what you've got there, and it is a thrilling experience, and I wouldn't recommend it for the faint-hearted. It's it's not exactly just sort of sitting in your car down the motorway, putting the foot to the metal. It's the parameters in a boat are so much different to a car because you're on a moving surface. So you've got everything moving. The boat's moving, the steering's moving, the engine's moving, the propeller's moving, but the surface you're on is also moving. So it's a very different experience. When I sort of boldly said, I'm going to break world water speed records, I'm going to honour my dad, and then you sat back and thought, oh, damn it, I've got to do it. There's no chickening out halfway through. So, you get into a big boat like that, fast boat, very powerful. And that feeling in the tummy and the heart rate, I can assure you, was really, really pumping. And when you finally have done it, it's, thank you, Lord, for letting me come through this, because it's quite scary. Well, from my point, I found it thrilling, scary.
Right.
Because, you know, in the flick of a switch...
Those are quite experienced. There's some experiences out
yeah,
there.
the flick of a switch,
Yeah.
it could be all be over.
Yeah.
In the blink of an eyelid, it could be goodbye, cruel world.
Yeah.
And that's quite a thing to actually do. I know we all our lives hang on silk threads. We could fall down the stairs, goodness me, tomorrow, and that could be. But when you willingly and knowingly are prepared to put your life on that very fine silk thread of what it holds by, that's when it is not for the faint-hearted.
So, go on. Not everybody watching will be familiar with your past in fast boats. Which record did you hold?
It was called the Ladies' World Water Speed Record, and people, some people sort of belittled it and said, well, why should a woman get a women's world? It should be the outright. But it was done more to encourage women to come into a sport that was so male-dominated. I mean, if I had to come in and look at doing over 300 miles an hour before I even got over the starting line, if you like, it would deter women from going into that sort of sporting achievement. And so it made good sense to me that actually, why not encourage women to participate and give them their own category so they can come in at a level that they're comfortable at. But 186 miles an hour is not slow.
I bet it's not. I've done about 150 on a motorcycle, and that's on
Well, yeah.
firm asphalt track. I can't imagine what it's like on water.
And that takes a big pair of balls as well.
Well, we've got one or two photographs here from the Ruskin Museum's own archive. There's a woman at the wheel of this boat here, Gina.
Yep, that's my mother.
Go on.
Yeah.
Who else? Which boat is that?
Well, that was my late grandfather, Malcolm Campbell's boat, that my father then decided he was going to use. And sadly, he had an accident here in Coniston and broke it to pieces.
Is that the one with birds on the side of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And who else do you recognise in that
I
picture?
recognise, obviously, my father and Leo, but I'm suspecting at that time I'm either a twinkle in my father's eye or I'm already twinkled.
Oh, you're already on the way.
I would imagine at that stage. I recognise Jeff there. I can't remember Leo. I think that's
So
Harry
Leo
Leach.
Villa was with your grandfather as well?
He was. I knew Leo Villa longer than I knew my father.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I knew him from till ever.
This looks like they were having a hell of a party somewhere.
Well,
what's
yeah.
going on here?
I wasn't there. I hope not, anyway, looking at that lot. But my father loved fancy dress. He would love to dress up. So I'm sure the local people here, it's obviously here in Coniston.
Would it be at the Sun Hotel, you think?
Most likely. I can see Leo, and I can see a few people that probably actually don't want to be recognised. Yes, maybe they were taking a day off work. But it is hilarious. I mean, it sort of looks something like a bit Oscar Wilde-ish, doesn't it? It's lovely. Look at them. I don't know what they're celebrating. Connie Robinson in there, and Leo from his, I can recognise anywhere.
I suppose when the pressure was off and you've survived doing something like that, there's a tremendous impulse for release and relief as well. So he was a bit of a party animal too.
And you know what the flip side of that is, Andy? The next day, what do you do? Suddenly, it's like after the Lord Mayor's show.
Life is pretty boring when you're not doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. You build up to this crescendo to attain these records. You break it, and it's all over. Yeah. What am I going to do tomorrow? Start
planning the next record.
Thank you very much. Yeah. You know, and that's what people would say. So what are you going to do then? When's the next one? Right. And push.
Well, here he is, standing up in the cockpit of K7. That looks to me like one of the later attempts. Is that December 66, January 67?
Do you know?
Oh, no, the trees are in leaf, aren't they?
They are, you're right. Somebody else with more knowledge, Neil Shepherd, would tell you in an instant the day, the time, and what my father was wearing. And I can't see the tail fin as to discover when she was.
A scooter converted for water use.
Robbie will tell you all about that. I mean, that is hilarious, isn't it?
Yes.
A Lambretta with a pair of floats on it.
Is that your dad?
It is, yes, yes. I heard stories about it, but I didn't think it was a serious piece of engineering like that. I wonder how fast it went.
Must have had paddles instead of wheels. Another party here, Gina, is probably in the Bull or the Sun Hotel. Your dad looks like he's had a couple in that one.
Yep, he does, doesn't he? Hair's flopped over. He's married to Dorothy. There's Jim Hinton there. There's Connie there.
Is this you?
No.
Who's this person here?
I'm going to tell you.
All right, okay.
Yes, but my father's second wife, Dorothy, is in that picture on his arm. And yeah, they're having a party again. Why not?
It's probably full of Coniston folk too.
Yeah, Connie Robinson's there,
Right.
yes.
He really did become like one of the community, didn't he?
He certainly did.
There was an occasion during a record attempt in the 1950s where there were some very bad floods, like flash floods in Coniston, weren't there? And your dad immediately threw himself into
Helping out.
the rescue attempts.
That's him. Likeable bloke.
Well, I was asking you, Gina, I said, is that you on the left-hand side?
I wish.
Go on.
I wish. Actually, the lady in the sunglasses is my father's mother. That's Lady Dorothy.
She was called Dolly, wasn't she?
Yes, nicknamed Dolly, but she was Dorothy. And the dog is Maxie, the Labradoodle. Do you know Labradoodles? My father named them. If you look on their website, they said the name was adopted and made up by Donald Campbell.
Good Lord.
Yep.
And until he did that, they were just regarded as a mongrel, were they?
Yeah, they were mongrels.
And now, of course, they're a really desirable breed.
Yep, well, Maxie was your original Labradoodle.
Good heavens.
Oh, he was a lovely dog. My father cried like a baby when he died.
So which year would that be?
I'm going to stab at 57. It was pre my father being married to Tonya, his widow. And the lady there, her name was Doris Swan. And she was my father's lady friend. do you know a euphemism my father used for his lady friends?
Oh, it was between wives, this one.
Oh,
I
yes,
see.
he was a single man.
He's right.
His euphemism for his lady friends, they were social secretaries. Isn't that lovely?
And what was she? Was she
Dory was my father's lady friend,
Right.
girlfriend, what do you call? And she was with my dad for quite a few years. Very, very lovely lady, beautiful girl, a model. You can see, I mean, wouldn't I wish that was me? Yes, no, but that's my grandmother in the
I
middle.
thought it was.
Yeah, well then hang on a minute. I was going to say, how old would I be?
You weren't old enough, were you?
I wasn't old enough. I mean, you're going back, yeah, he married Tonya in 58, 59, so that's sort of, I'm going to say 57, 58.
Okay. It's a happy team.
Yep. Fantastic, aren't they? I mean, these pictures just give you a sense of the whole era. Maury there, Leo there, and Robin sadly passed away recently. One of the Norris brothers there, Ken Norris.
The designers.
Yes.
What's the occasion here, Gina?
I don't know. You ask me.
All right. It's,
All those women. Must have
never.
been
With your dad?
Women's Institute.
No, it seems quite a lot of people through social media contacting the Ruskin Museum, Gina, want to know, how did you go, and I'm going to explain something here as well, how did Gina go from lapping up the adulation on Butte for Bluebird K7's first return to the water in 51 years, and saying that Bluebird was too young to sit in a crusty old museum, to your remarks on the 4th of January in this room, and I was here that morning, which some people described as the suicide speech, where you said you thought it was time that Bluebird came back to take up its position, which you can see behind us here, in the Bluebird wing. They want to know, how do you reconcile those two positions?
I'm going to start off by the first part of the sentence. Lapping up adulation in Butte. Do you know there was only two things that lapped up adulation in Butte. Number one was Bluebird.
Of course, and I was there, I can confirm that.
And number two was the BBP. The effort and the energy and the brilliance of what that team put together was something that the last thing I ever thought I'd see in my life. So adulation, certainly for Bluebird and certainly for the effort of the volunteers and Mr. Smith, what they had achieved was just overwhelming. And you know, put yourself into my position. Something's just happened that I couldn't believe in my wildest dreams could ever happen, to see my father's boat reincarnated in such a way. The excitement. And bless the people of Coniston, they understand when I said crusty. It was not meant in a derogatory word. I still stand by the fact I want the world to see Bluebird, but she won't be seen by the world where she is at the moment. And that time span from Butte to where we are today has been too long. Bluebird belongs here in the museum. I gave the boat, deed of gifted the boat.
To the museum?
To the museum.
And this wing was specially built to accommodate it, wasn't it?
A huge amount of effort.
What a beautiful setting for it.
Absolutely.
With so many of your dad's artefacts in the display cases around the walls, yeah.
And I have never changed my mind. You know, I have been accused of changing my mind and flip-flopping. One thing is not relative to the other. Bluebird belongs to the Ruskin Museum. That's it and all about it.
Right.
The family gifted it. Therefore now, Mr. Smith and all his volunteers have done a staggering job. But it's time for her to be returned to her owners. It's a little bit like you having a beautiful old dilapidated old car in your garage. It's missing a few doors and panels, and the bumpers and the headlights are not there. And you take it to a store, he says, oh God, I tell you, that's my dream, to restore that car. Oh, that will be a beauty. It won't cost you 1 penny piece. Awfully sorry, I actually don't want to give it back to you now.
Right, you're not having it, yeah. I'm keeping it because I restored it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very sad situation. Bluebird could have returned here after Butte, magnificent, with Mr. Smith and all his volunteers, many of them.
Bill Smith, the engineer who brought it up from the bottom of
I think
Coniston
most people will know.
Carried out the restoration. Yeah.
Could all have been sat astride it. They could have ridden into Coniston like Julius Caesar into Rome, and everybody would have clapped and cheered.
Yeah.
Here we are in a rather sad, sorry situation.
Well, we can't say a great deal at the moment about the situation, the custody situation, the ownership of it.
Well, you see, I don't see the issue.
There is no debate as far as you're concerned.
There is no debate.
Right.
Bluebird belongs to the Ruskin Museum.
I think, Gina, as well, I should explain something as well. I feel partly responsible for the crusty old museum remarks standing on the lake shore on the slipway at Butte, because you and I were standing next to each other. I was reporting the thing, and we were all thrilled to bits when it ignited and when it ran, and to see it doing so for the first time in more than half a century. And you, more than anyone else, were entirely justified in being ecstatic about seeing your dad's boat. When it finished that run, being the reporter, the journalist, I jumped in with the microphone and the television camera, and I asked you how you felt, and you were just so delighted. You were squealing with excitement, weren't you? And you made that remark about it must go around the world, it mustn't sit in a crusty old museum. And this was the fault of the way that film was then edited. Because what happened, what the viewers didn't see, and what kind of amplified your remarks that it shouldn't sit in a crusty old museum, was they cut out my immediate response to you when the film was edited. Because if you recall, I came straight back at you and said, but hang on, Gina, it's not a crusty old museum. It's a beautiful new wing that they've had built onto the Ruskin Museum in Coniston to celebrate your dad and to celebrate Bluebird K7. And that went from the film as it was broadcast, or the way it was cut to be broadcast. And then you agreed with me.
Well, of course.
So
and
what was broadcast was actually a distortion of what really happened.
That so often happens, doesn't it? Yep, slip of the tongue, I've apologised, not the right adjective to use because there is nothing crusty about the Ruskin Museum. I wanted everybody, and I still do want everybody to see her.
Yes.
But unfortunately, where she is now, nobody's seen her.
Yeah, it was the excitement of the moment. We were all carried away with that. And, you know, I blame the film editors, not you.
No, I utter the words, I have to put my hands up. And I apologise, and I have done at home.
So, what do you think would ideally be the resolution in the situation once all this is sorted out? Obviously, she should be sitting there where it's all planned out on the floor in this wing that was specially built. And then, would you like to see the old girl go out for a dignified trot on Coniston once a year?
Well, I wouldn't want to put a timescale on that because, you know what, the moment you say, let's pull Bluebird out next week and we get the world here, do you know what will happen? Him up there will make sure it can't because of the weather. But of course, you know, nothing would be more thrilling than to, in a way, to see her on Coniston. But it would also give me a little bit the creeps, you know, a little bit of deja vu. I would love to see her on the water there. I'd love to see her outside the lakeside there.
Do you think your dad would have liked to think, after all these years, it would run on Coniston again?
I can't answer that. A lot of people say, oh, you know, nobody gets in the boat and this and that. Other people have driven it, you know. My father wasn't the only person.
Well, Leo drove it.
Yes, he did, yeah. You know, can I answer for my father? I can't in every department. Would he like it? You know, he was an engineer, and, you know, we must give all the credit to the engineering feat in restoring Bluebird to how she was at Bute. And that should be here, celebrated by everybody. Everybody coming through that door and looking at it and going, wow.
And going seeing your dad whilst they're here in the graveyard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to enjoy the whole village and what the village has to offer.
Wonderful place.
And the legacy of John Ruskin.
And the rest of the museum, quite right.
You know, it's not just about Donald Campbell Coniston, it's got an awful lot else.
Yes.
And it's easy to lose sight that there is an awful lot more here in Coniston than just Donald Campbell and Bluebird.
I agree with you. I love spending time here. There's a question here, Gina, which seems almost superfluous at this stage because he's been sitting on your knee throughout. But Nick Brooke asks, does Gina still have Mr. Whoppit? And also Eliza Dady has got another Mr. Whoppit question for you. How did Mr. Whoppit get his name?
Okay.
And I know you've done a lot of travelling. Where is the best place you have travelled? And where would you like to go next? Let's deal with Mr. Whoppit
Let's deal with
first.
Mr. Whoppit first. Well, yes, here's Mr. Whoppit.
The original?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
That was the one that was always in the cockpit with
Oh,
your
yes.
dad.
I mean, look at the state of him, you can tell.
Well, he survived a
He
bit
did.
of a crash, didn't he?
He's a bit threadbare, and he's got his little red coat on. And he lost his boots in my dad's accident, and he had little straw stumps. So he always had little sort of bluey boots, and a friend of mine made these rather strange little prosthetic limbs for him.
Where did he come from, and how did he get
He
his name?
started off in the comic book, The Dandy. That was the junior comic to the Eagle.
Yes.
So boys' comic. And it was the tales of Mr. Whoppit, going back to the 40s and 50s.
All right.
Well, actually, yes, 40s. My father didn't get him till into the 50s. And the tales of Mr. Whoppit, he was made for the artist to draw his sketches from. So this was the prop that sat on his desk that he referred to every time.
And how did your dad come by it?
He had a great friend called Peter Barker, who was high up in management at IPC magazines. And when the tales of Mr. Whoppit finished, they didn't know what to do with this little fellow that had sat on the artist's desk all that time. And Peter Barker came up with the idea, my father being superstitious, he should have a permanent mascot. And hence Mr. Whoppit came to live with us, and he's been with us ever since.
Wow. And were they marketing at one stage? Because
Yes.
here in the Ruskin Museum, in one of the display cases, there's a replica Mr. Whoppit in a cardboard box.
Mr. Whoppit's English made, which very few bears are this day, by a company called Merrythorpe down at Ironbridge.
Can you still get them?
Well, Not anymore. They sold out. I was approached, 1991-ish. Would I be agreeable for them to make 5,000 numbered limited edition Mr. Whoppit lookalikes, and would I sign the boxes and give them some exclusive photographs? And the answer was yes.
Does that come from that period?
And that came from the 90s.
Right.
You can't get them for love nor money at the moment. I don't even have one.
You've got the original.
I have the original, who sadly lives wrapped up in tissue paper.
I thought you were going to say a bank safe, and
Yeah, well,
rightly so.
in a safe. He has round his neck my father's original Saint.
Is it St. Christopher, man?
Yeah, this came up with my father's body. This St. Christopher.
That same one.
Oh, this one. It says to Donald from Dady, 1941.
Wow.
And this came up when...
Mr. Whoppit, what a responsibility.
I know.
And it's on the Longines.
On the Longines, well, he's classy.
Yeah. Well, they did your dad's timekeeping.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly the reason why. And they gave me the ribbon for it. And this little bluebird, my dad used to have them on his shirts, just on the breast there, just his little monogram. And I cut that off one of my dad's shirts and stitched it on there. And it's been there ever since. He's been a long way, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yes, he's a good boy.
He's seen some action and some
He has
remarkable
the
things.
fastest bear on land and water.
Sophia Dady, the record, the song about your dad's.
Yes,
Beautiful
beautiful song,
yeah.
a new song coming out on the March 23rd.
What was she? Oh, another one coming out.
Called Twinkle in His Eyes.
Right, to celebrate the 100th birthday.
Yes, and it's absolutely fabulous. She let me have a sneak listen recently, and it's beautiful. She's done my dad proud.
Good stuff. Anyway, she wants to know, what was your dad's lucky number? And why did your dad say nothing good comes of a Friday? And does Gina have a mascot? And if so, what's its name?
Whoa.
Do you need another mascot after you've got that?
He used to come boat racing with me, and he was on my record attempts always. So I suppose to answer that question, is my lucky mascot.
Still Mr. Whoppit.
Still is Mr. Whoppit. My lucky number, you see, one would steer to 7 because of Bluebird K7
Sure.
and CN7, but that just so happened to be their registered numbers, the boat at Lloyd's and the motor nautique in Monaco. So 7 just came that way. Isn't 7 the Chinese lucky number?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
No.
So, lucky number, no. But my dad being so superstitious.
Why didn't he like Fridays?
Well, you know, Fridays are meant to be Friday 13th. You won't get me to get hardly out of bed on Friday 13th.
He wouldn't?
I wouldn't.
Oh, right,
I don't.
okay.
It's instilled in me.
Yeah.
I fell off a ladder once on Friday the 13th and broke my arm in 3 places. So there's testament to you that it's unlucky. Or it's more stupid to get up the ladder without bracing it. My father was extremely superstitious, you know, and so anything that he thought would bring him luck without wishing him good luck, you must never wish him good luck. He had a gentleman wanted a job with him called Evan Green, Welshman.
We didn't like green, did he?
No.
The colour.
And he said, I will very happily give you a job, Ewan, but you'll have to change your name. And he did. He changed his name to Ewan.
Brian Green.
No, the green had to go.
No.
Oh, sorry, you're too fast for me. He changed it to Ewan Turquoise.
Fantastic.
And that's true.
What did he do for you, Dad?
He was an engineer.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Last one, Gina. Pete Clark. How does it feel to know that your family's achievements still find new generations of enthusiasts?
It is so humbling to know that my father has such a wonderful base of devotees, people that have brought their sons and their grandsons in to marvel at what my father achieved. It's really hard for me to actually believe he was my father. What did I do to deserve? Why me? You know, so when I see young people adulating at the Speed Record Club when they have their meetings, which of course can't happen at the moment, and I see these young faces, and I'm not talking about 6-year-olds, but I'm talking about sort of young teenagers up into their early 20s, revering my father, treasuring memorabilia from my father. It really does. It really does touch. And I know everything they've done was not in vain. If that's what my father's left behind, this interest in engineering and his achievements, and to bring kids into engineering of that advanced nature is just the pinnacle for my dad. It would be for my dad. I know it would.
Still inspiring people, isn't he?
Yes. And look, with all the volunteers that have helped with the restoration, it's all about passion, and it's all about respect for what my father achieved, and the fact that they can work on Bluebird. It's just it's wonderful. It's humbling. I'm touched. I'm grateful. Thank you. I can't really find more adjectives for everything that everybody does. What the Ruskin Museum do to perpetuate my father's name, people like yourselves in every walk of life. If it wasn't for spreading the word, you and I wouldn't be sitting here today. And
no, of
that's
course not.
what's so fantastic. And it has to come up from the grassroots, and we have to keep it going in perpetuity. Hence the museum. If the people don't bring will come and see Bluebird when she's here. They will bring their children, their grandchildren, and this will inspire even more generations all the way.
There was something about him, this is certainly true of me, Gina, his achievements, what he was doing, that to this day still generates boyish enthusiasm for the kind of stuff, for doing what was so implausible and seemingly impossible. And it doesn't escape me, because I was there at the time. This was running in parallel, all to your dad's world records, with manned spaceflight. Again, it was something that was seemingly impossible, but they proved it was in fact attainable, and that's what your dad did as well.
Yes, absolutely, Andy.
I've got one last one for you, a question of my own, which is, had he not been killed here in Coniston, January the 4th, 1967, what do you think he would have gone on to do?
You laugh.
Well,
Wanted to be a politician.
Did he?
Yeah, he really wanted to make the world a better place. He really, really did believe so much in the right thing for people. He was very humanitarian like that. And he already had, before his accident, had spoken at a lot of pals who were MPs, spoken at their gatherings and what have you. He loved to motivate people and inspire people to a better life.
Were those MPs saying to him, yes, we'll find you a safe seat here?
Oh, my father wouldn't have wanted a safe seat. He'd want a fighting one, wouldn't he? No, I think he was very keen on going into politics.
Conservative, Labour or Liberal?
I think we'll just say in the middle.
Oh, right, okay. Very good.
I have to say Conservative, because it'd be foolish to conceal that we were brought up as a Conservative family, lived in the beautiful part of Surrey, I had a charmed life, very lucky. And yes, my father believed in the freedom of conservatism and for people to be able to plan their own lives, but with the support from government behind them. So yes, to answer your question, definitely yes, Conservative with a capital C, but not in some of the ways that you can see people that would steer it extremely right-wing. My father was not extremely right-wing. He believed in the rights for everybody. Hence why he would give people jobs that had...
A patrician Conservative, I think they're called.
Okay, what does that mean? And, people that didn't have the experience, but give them the opportunity to learn. And Leo Villa, of course, was a fantastic teacher, that could teach people engineering. So, here we go, the youth of today. Youth of today, get into record breaking. Way to go.
Splendid. Gina, it's been a huge pleasure talking to you, especially,
and you too,
especially in these surroundings.
Yep.
And I'd like to thank Jago and Ian, our two cameramen, Robin Cooper on the stills.
Yep.
And Tracy, the general manager of the Ruskin Museum. Come and visit them when they reopen, when that's allowed, and when I can have a haircut.
I'll do it for you.
And thank you to all the people that sent in questions. But thanks most of all to you, Gina Campbell.
Oh, my pleasure.
Are we allowed to shake hands, or will I be arrested?
I think I'll be arrested.
Okay.
Shake with Mr. Whoppit.
Ah, what a great honour. A great honour. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
One of the greatest heroes that you'll know. A man courageous, he just can't wait to go. 'Cause there's no task on earth that's big enough for him. Cruising through the land at speed in everything he's in. 'Cause when he's got that twinkle in his eye, nothing's gonna stop him. Don't even try, he's onto something and everybody knows. Leaving us behind him, yeah, off he goes. Quick into action, the man behind the mask. Press close behind him, he's off before they ask. What is it that's driving him? No one will ever know. A Campbell in a speed machine, just watch him go.